Welcome to the Immune Edit. I'm Dr. Doug Jones. If your immune system feels like the enemy, or you're just tired of not feeling like yourself, this space is for you. You may have seen or will see headlines about the discontinuation of something called Palforzia. Have you heard of Palforzia? What is this? Well, Palforzia was the first FDA-approved peanut allergy treatment, and now it's being discontinued. And immediately, many families, understandably, may have felt some fear. And it also kind of raises a lot of questions about what does this mean for food allergy treatment? Does it mean the food allergy treatment failed? Does this mean oral immunotherapy, which Palforzia is or was, doesn't work? Does this mean we're going backwards? The answer is absolutely not. In fact, I would argue the exact opposite. Palforzia may be ending, but food allergy treatment is actually moving fast. And when I say fast, I mean that in a couple of ways. Literally, the field is moving fast. It's moving at a rapid pace. But there's also another meaning in what I'm saying. So while Palforzia was marketed and often viewed by some as quote unquote the future of food allergy treatment, there has quietly been an entire national and global network of allergists building the future in real time over the last 2 decades. And that network is called FAST, or a nonprofit organization called the Food Allergy Support Team. So FAST is an organization that I co-founded and serve as the president of. It comprises allergists and clinical teams focused on advancing real-world food allergy treatment through collaboration, shared experience, data collection, clinical innovation, and practical patient-centered care. And next week, actually, many of the most experienced food allergy treatment clinicians in the world will gather at the 9th annual Food Allergy Support Team annual meeting in Dallas to discuss where the field is actually heading. And we cover a variety of topics, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. But I'm so excited for this conference because FAST truly has been that quiet leader that really has set the table for food allergy treatment. And it used to be just in the United States, but now we actually have a global reach. We have clinicians and specialists from Europe, Canada, Mexico, and a variety of countries that come in now. And it's amazing. And the collaboration that's there has been truly wonderful. So this episode is important because I think the Palforzia story is being misunderstood. It is not any kind of failure of food allergy treatment. Rather, this is the evolution of it. And this is an important pivot point in how I think food allergy treatment is perceived. So one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, right now is the idea that Palforzia created oral immunotherapy. Many think that because it was created by a pharmaceutical company with deep marketing dollars, and that's the message that was kind of put out. And I believe they had influence with our national societies, and so that's the message that was put out. But I've personally been involved, along with many of my other more esteemed colleagues, in pioneering food allergy treatment for nearly 15 years, long before FDA approval, long before Wall Street became interested in food allergy therapeutics, long before Nestle bought Aimmune, who was the original creator of Palforzia, for over $2 billion. Many of us predicted the operational and scalability challenges years prior to that. Looking back, I think there was insufficient engagement with the clinicians already building kind of this large scale real world food allergy treatment system. During that entire period, allergists across the country were already successfully treating patients and using carefully and highly structured programs where real foods were initially introduced in microscopic amounts to retrain something immunologically that the body perceived as life-threatening. Over time, through careful, controlled exposure, the immune system can begin shifting from danger signaling towards tolerance. Real peanut flour, real peanut protein, not just peanut though, milk, eggs, wheat, sesame, tree nuts, real food, not proprietary capsules. It was real world medicine. Now, to be clear, Palforzia did matter. It was historically important. It helped legitimize food allergy treatment publicly and regulatorily, if that's a word, in the minds of many. And that matters. And in many ways, Palforzia helped validate what experienced food allergy clinicians had already been demonstrating for many years. That immune tolerance can be retrained. But one of the tensions that existed early in the field was that many community allergists doing OIT were often treated as inferior or unsafe or cowboys, as I've been called many times. I mean, I did grow up in Idaho on a small farm, kind of cowboyish, but not in that sense. So we were often treated as cowboys or unsafe because we were not using a pharmaceutical product. And it was really hard for people in like our national leadership, I think, to kind of wrap their head around, wow, we can actually treat people without pharmaceuticals. And the other difference too is because we were just using real food, we weren't funding things. Whereas these companies were funding a lot of the messages that I think were going out. But that's really how marketing often plays into this. And that was frustrating because many of us actually wanted collaboration. Years ago, I had multiple conversations, not one, not two, many conversations with the scientific leaders connected to AMune. I'm not going to name names. That's not what I'm about. This is about just telling kind of the educational story of what happened with AMune. But I had many conversations with their scientific leaders. We had much more experience in the field, operationally and clinically. And I told them directly that there were going to be challenges. They were going to be faced with challenges. And we predicted many of these issues and had discussions about this years ago. Palforzia is not being discontinued because it didn't work. It was effective. It helped. It's being discontinued because it couldn't sell. There were access challenges, scalability challenges, cost challenges, patient burden challenges. Again, we wanted to have some collaboration early on and tried many times to have that kind of collaboration. But instead of partnering with the clinicians already treating patients successfully, there was kind of this sense of competition. And I think ultimately that hurt the field more than it helped. But let's also clarify something very important. Again, Palforzia wasn't discontinued because it didn't work. Even the reporting around the discontinuation explicitly stated the decision was not related to safety, quality, or efficacy. The issue was commercial adoption, in my opinion. And honestly, many of us predicted these challenges, as I said, years ago, because the problem was never immunology alone. The problem was trying to fit a highly individualized immune treatment process into a rigid pharmaceutical delivery structure. Palforzia required something called REMS enrollment, certified offices, certified pharmacies, frequent updosing visits, administrative infrastructure, insurance navigation, a high operational burden. and significant patient time commitment. And all of that existed on top of the fact that it only treated peanut allergy. It's like I have me and many in our circles call it peanut privilege. But the fact is, a vast majority of us doing treatment realize that most of our patients don't just have peanut allergy. They have multiple food allergies, and many, whether it's milk, eggs, wheat, tree nuts, shellfish, soy, sesame, which has really increased over the last several years. That's the real world, and multiple foods. And so just doing the peanut privilege, didn't help. It wasn't the answer for many of these patients. Because Palforzia just had solely the peanut and expensive, on top of the administrative burdens that we've talked about, we knew, again, there was going to be challenges there. Meanwhile, many experienced clinicians in the real world, those that were participating in the food allergy support team in the FAST, already had developed scalable treatment systems using real food and showing it worked with lower administrative burden, greater flexibility, broader applicability across multiple allergens, doing multiple foods simultaneously, using individualized protocols adapted to the patient sitting right in front of them. And importantly, many of these treatments were being done successfully, again, using real food at dramatically lower cost. I think about one patient in particular, a young child who once could not safely ingest even microscopic amounts of milk and eggs without severe reactions, and the family lived in constant fear. Birthday parties were terrifying. School felt dangerous. Travel felt impossible. And all the while, peanuts getting the press and the marketing, there is a difference when you're having to avoid milk and eggs in terms of like real world and what they have to avoid and what their life is like. Things can feel terrifying no matter what the allergen is. But just because the marketing promoted peanut, these children that were having to avoid milk and eggs and wheat and a lot of these very, very common foods that are in every single meal, these families lived in constant fear, and birthday parties were terrifying. School felt dangerous. Travel felt impossible. And over time, through carefully structured treatment, that same child can now sit and eat pizza at a party alongside their friends without the fear of dominating the room. And that's what it's really about. This isn't about peanut flour. This is about freedom. So the issue wasn't, does desensitization work? We already knew it could work. We already knew that. The more important questions become, what's the risk benefit? What's most scalable? How can we make this accessible? How can we make this affordable? How can we create a more patient-centered way to deliver this? And I think that's sometimes where pharmaceuticals lose concept, because they're more structured within a boardroom, not in a clinic room with a patient in front of them. And that's where I think the story becomes really important. FAST, Food Allergy Support Team, is not a fringe organization. It is one of the largest collaborative, real-world food allergy treatment networks in existence. But FAST grew quietly through outcomes rather than through marketing campaigns. We're not building a brand around a product. We're building systems around patients. And the data coming out of FAST is incredibly important because it reflects actual clinical practice. Our 2026 FAST survey, which is going to be presented, the data from that survey is going to be presented next week at our annual meeting. We had nearly 150 responding practices. These practices are treating patients every single day, not hypothetically, not theoretically, in real clinics. And what the FAST data shows is remarkable. Nearly all practices treat peanut allergy, but also many are treating milk and eggs and sesame and tree nuts and multiple foods. And many practices are treating infants and toddlers and adults, which I think often get left out of this conversation. We often forget that adults have allergies too and have needs too. Many of the practices across the globe are now using not only oral immunotherapy, but sublingual immunotherapy, depending on the patient. Many are integrating biologics like omalizumab selectively. Many are modifying maintenance frequency over time, and many are achieving high success rates in reaching those targets. This is no longer an experimental niche. This is an evolving treatment ecosystem. And the future is no longer one treatment for every patient. It's finding the treatment that fits the individual, finding the right treatment for the right patient at the right time. Next week's FAST meeting reflects exactly how sophisticated the field has become, but also how fast it's moving with OIT, sublingual immunotherapy, biologics, epicutaneous treatment, or like patches on the skin, the evolving nature of maintenance strategies, shared decision making, the psychosocial burden, the nutritional burden, outcome predictions, feeding challenges, how to deal with multiple foods at once, and also strategies at reducing the burden of care, taking treatment to you, making it more accessible. This is the future of food allergy treatment. Not one product, but an entire therapeutic menu that's centered on the patient, that's happening with boots on the ground in the real world. And the biggest conceptual shift in food allergy treatment, I think, over the last decade is this: we've moved beyond absolutes. At this point, the field has largely moved beyond debating whether desensitization can work. It does. Get past that. If you're still asking that question, I'm sorry, you're really behind. The more important questions now are: how do we make treatment safer, more accessible, more durable, more individualized? How do we reduce the burden while improving the outcomes? How do we shift that risk benefit ratio? Because these are the real questions. It's which treatment or therapy is right for which patient at a given point in time in their journey. Some patients may do beautiful with traditional OIT. Some may benefit from sublingual. Some may need biologics. Some may need a hybrid approach. Some families prioritize protection from accidental exposure. Others prioritize free eating. Others prioritize reducing anxiety. Others prioritize convenience. This is shared decision making. And it's one of the reasons FAST has continued growing while highly rigid systems struggle. There's another part of this conversation that honestly needs to be said openly. And one of the reasons food allergy treatment guidelines evolved so slowly over the last decade is because much of the organized medicine is deeply intertwined with pharmaceutical funding structures. This is not unique to allergy. This exists throughout medicine. But in the food allergy specialty, many of the major national organizations and at our national meetings, the education platforms, even treatment conversations have historically been heavily influenced by industry relationships, even though they have kind of these non-disclosures and conflicts of interest listed. Just because you list it doesn't mean that the conflict doesn't exist. I think that's actually slowed the progress. And many of the more visible forces in food allergy have also simultaneously served as consultants, speakers, investigators, advisory board members, or scientific leaders for companies developing food allergy therapeutics. Again, that doesn't automatically invalidate the science, and it's not something that necessarily they can't do. It's just when they have those conflicts of interest and they're on those certain boards, those that have been doing kind of the boots on the ground have often been dismissed, unheard, invalidated. Yet we've continued quietly focusing again on our outcomes, not so much the agendas. The patients are our agendas. Physicians that are actually doing large scale, real world food allergy experience every day are often operating outside of some of those bigger power structures. That's what makes FAST actually different. FAST is not funded by industry. FAST does not exist to sell certain products. FAST is built by allergists, working for allergists that are working for patients, serving patients in the real world. And I think that independence matters because when you remove the pressure of protecting a certain product or a company or a funding stream, you can start asking different questions. You can ask harder questions. You can ask the questions of what helps patients most, what reduces the burden, what is scalable, what is affordable, what improves their quality of life, what creates long-term freedom. And that's why I think FAST has evolved the way it did. Not around a product, around patients, and around supporting the clinicians and the allergists and their teams that are a part of this. We're better together. I'm not trying to alienate larger societies. I'm not trying to alienate anyone. What I am trying to delineate is some of the challenges that we've faced by some of the larger entities who have tried to dismiss us. I would much rather collaborate, work together. I mean, I've actually submitted proposals to our larger organizations multiple times for workshops, been denied, declined. We would love to have collaboration. I think again we're better together, and we want to reach across and say, let's work together. We can share in this together, because we have a network of allergists and clinicians that are really shaping the scale of what we do. And I believe the gap between what's happening in the real world and what's happening in academics, that gap needs to close, become non-existent. The future of food allergy treatment is going to require all of us, academics, private practice, researchers, industry, and patient communities working together instead of just protecting silos. And I think the Palforzia story exposed exactly why collaboration matters, because patients are individualized, immune systems are individualized, life circumstances are individualized, real world medicine matters. And I think food allergy treatment needs to kind of reflect that reality. The future of food allergy treatment should be driven primarily by patient outcomes, clinician experiences, and real world experience, not solely by product-centered agendas. Let's talk just a little bit about one more topic before I conclude. Now, I do agree with one important thing that I have seen being discussed online right now. The future of this field is not simply temporary desensitization. The future is durable immune change. It's about immune reprogramming, tolerance, disease modification, lower burden. It's also about a neurologic or hormonal retraining, recognizing that deep psychosocial burden that food allergy plays. This isn't just about the immune system. This is about a person. It is about all their systems at play. That's why we have to stay flexible, safe, more personalization. The real world physicians are the infrastructure, the clinical infrastructure that already exists, and the patient demand already exists. The experience exists. What has just been missing is kind of alignment. And I would love to see larger organizations align with FAST and align with kind of the approach that we're moving towards, kind of aligning with the work that allergists are already doing. To those families who may be listening, I don't want you to hear the Palforzia news and think hope is disappearing, because honestly, we now have more treatment options than ever before. Patients will still be treated, children will gain freedom, families will reclaim their lives. Palforzia was an important chapter in food allergy history, but it was never the entire story. And in many ways, the field is just getting started. The future of food allergy treatment is moving fast. And I genuinely believe the next decade will have even more transformation than the last. The goal is not simply desensitization. The goal is helping people move from fear to understanding. And I think there's also a metaphor for society in this. Over the years, I've rubbed shoulders peacefully with people from all over the world whose countries, politics, religions may all be at odds, even war with one another. But one of the common unifiers as I went around the world was food allergy. We existed peacefully despite all of those other differences. We existed peacefully because we had that common challenge, that common struggle, a common humanity. We all ultimately wanted the same basic things: safety, health, freedom, hope for children. Sometimes money, ego, and agendas blur that focus. But once we kind of move beyond the ego, move beyond the money, beyond the agendas, and refocus on people, something changes. There's more clarity, more compassion, and maybe even more tolerance towards what we were once so reactive to and so sensitive to. Ironically, that may be one of the deepest lessons of food allergy treatment has to teach society itself. So let's end with some immune edits. When I say immune edits, these aren't like biohacks or little things. These are, what are some changes that we can make? What are the lessons that we can learn? What are the edits that we can make as we transition and transform ourselves? First, Palforzia ending is not a failure in food allergy treatment. The field has evolved beyond a single product. Rather, it's a lesson of what could have been with collaboration. Oral immunotherapy existed long before an FDA approval. Real-world clinicians helped build this field for decades by listening to real-world patients, by trying to meet the unmet needs of real-world patients. The future is individualized treatment. I often say we shouldn't try to have everyone get fit into a certain protocol, but rather we should find the treatment that fits the person, that fits the one. Real world medicine matters. Some of the most important innovation happens quietly in clinics, not boardrooms. Shouldn't be dismissed. Often in clinics, we see those initial signals that are out there. Those signals matter. We can then formally research, study, collect data, pivot, move, and ultimately treat patients. So the real world medicine shouldn't be dismissed. FAST represents a patient-centered, clinician-built model driven by outcomes rather than marketing. The other edit is pharmaceutical innovation also matters, but collaboration matters more. Incentive-shaped medicine, what gets amplified, funded, and delayed is not always neutral. Grassroots clinicians can change entire fields. FAST has shown that. The real goal, by the way, in all the food allergy treatment was never peanut flour. The goal is freedom, normalcy. Food allergy treatment becomes a broader lesson. Fear creates rigidity. Understanding creates tolerance. When we move beyond ego, money, and agendas and refocus on people, focus on compassion, on humanity, that's where clarity happens. That's where our focus can sharpen. And that's when life becomes possible again for many who may have been siloed, may have been discounted, unheard. And again, hopefully we can move forward in a patient-focused, patient-centered individualization of care, finding less burden, more affordability, more accessibility, that really is focused on that person and not so much a boardroom. If your doctor, by the way, if you are a doctor or you're a patient and have a doctor who's not involved with FAST, let them know about us. It's at fastoit.org. And thank you for joining this episode of The Immune Edit. Thank you so much again for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The Immune Edit. This show is separate from my clinical practice at Global Allergy Immune Network. This show represents my opinions and my guests' opinions. Neither myself nor the show endorses the views or statements of my guests. This show is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. This show is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. If you're looking for help in your journey, please seek out a qualified medical practitioner. It's important to have someone in your corner who is a trained and licensed healthcare practitioner who can help you make changes, especially when it comes to your health.